Hi, I'm Peggy Kelly with the Santa Paula Times, and today is Thursday, August 5th, and this is Good Morning Santa Paula, and we have some very special guests with us today. We've got Betsy Blanchard Chess, who's written a wonderful book called Daughter of the Land, Growing Up in the Citrus Capital of the World, and we know that's from Santa Clara River Valley. And we also had library director, the Blanchard Community Library Director, Ned Branch. Betsy's going to be having a book signing at the library on August 14th, a week from Saturday, and that is going to be from 1 to 4 p.m. And we're looking forward to a lot of people. I've been reading the book. It's an excellent book, and I want to welcome you both today and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Peggy.
Yeah, great. Now, I think it's interesting that before we go anywhere else, there's a relationship between Betsy's family and the library. And let us know what that relationship is, Betsy.
Well, yes, it's a very, very close relationship in a couple of ways. Originally, my great-grandparents, Nathan Weston Blanchard, and my great-grandmother, Anne Elizabeth Hobbs, who in fact founded Santa Paula in 1873, he was a strict teetotaler. And in 1906, the two saloons in town had their licenses coming up for renewal. So there was a meeting, and great-grandfather said, if Santa Paula votes to go dry, I will make a donation to build a library. And Santa Paula so voted, and that was the beginning of the then called the Dean Hobbs Blanchard Memorial Library. It was named after their firstborn son, who had died when he was 6 years old. So and so I say that's the first connection, and then the second one really was in an event at the library a year ago, February, and it was at the occasion of, well, among other things, 110 years that the Blanchard Community Library had been operating. And my brother John Blanchard and I were speaking. And as we talked, I realized that the story that I guess I'd been incubating, note I don't say procrastinating, for so long, it was like, now is the time. And then 2 weeks later is the COVID lockdown. So I was blessed with time, and that's when I started to write the book.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's wonderful. It really is. And time has so much to do with it too. But I think that, you know, it's the type of thing where now, Ned, would you tell the audience too how Blanchard Community Library is actually an independent library? And I think, is it the only independent library in the county?
Pretty much. We're not part of the city, and we're not part of the county. We're actually an independent library with our own elected board of trustees. So we're really answerable to the voters, not to bureaucrats. Although I guess I'm a bureaucrat by definition, but I'm answerable to the trustees, and the trustees are answerable
with a small b.
Yeah, bureaucrat with a small b. So we are all and only about serving the people of Santa Paula.
Well, and you know, and that's a wonderful example of Betsy. Your family was dedicated to serving the people of Santa Paula. So could you talk a little bit about their history? I know that most people that are watching this are familiar with your name and familiar with a little of family history, if not quite a bit. So why don't you talk about your parents, your ancestors' impacts on Santa Paula and the potential they saw here and the dedication they gave to the community, albeit at times maybe a little controversial, but let's
Yes, well, it really started, as I mentioned, with great-grandfather, and he was Nathan Weston Blanchard. And there's a lot of Nathan Weston Blanchards in our family. I think we're down up to about 5 at this point. But as I mentioned, he founded the city in 1873. And then in 1893, 20 years later, he and Wallace Libby Hardison, who was the co-founder of the Union Oil Company, came together with some other investors, and they founded the Limonera Company. which you'll like this, Peggy, that the Santa Paula Chronicle, I think it was in 1912, proclaimed Santa Paula to be the citrus capital of the world and Limonera to be the world's largest lemon ranch. So that certainly was a beginning. He and great-grandmother were involved in many civic activities. He was one of the founders of Pomona College, for instance. Moving into other generations, my great aunt, whom I write about, Sarah Blanchard, she was involved with the library. In fact, there's a school in town called the Blanchard School, and she was there for that dedication. My parents were very involved. Many people knew my parents. My father died way young in 1965, but he was a very active person in the community. My mom was Elizabeth Blanchard, and she was on both the elementary and the high school boards for 17 years. And then just a myriad of other activities in the county. So
And Vermont Library was part of the high school board too.
Yes, exactly. So it was really kind of predestined, I guess, that I would be involved with the community.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Now, what they say very often when people write books and things like that, there's a little voice talking to them. I suspect that yours might have been Sarah. Your now, correct me if I'm wrong, and I might add, I adore your mother, and she was a lovely woman, and worked so hard for the community, and it's very stately and elegant. So that's my plug for darling Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You know, I think you're very on point, Peggy, that it really was Aunt Sarah, because she herself had written a book. She was 93 when she wrote hers, so she was no piker. And it was both an inspiration, but also a bit daunting, that she had done this, and what more could I say? But yes, definitely. And then there was also the cautionary voices. Some people in town that I knew were historians, and it was like, oh my gosh, what's this person going to think about what I've written? So it was kind of a push-pull, I think.
Interesting. Did you have any rep points as far as just in general? Did you have any writer's block? Or now, of course, you had all those wonderful photos that are also in the book, which really helped. I suspect are inspirational as it is. So you've got how many photos in the book? You've got
over 200.
Wow.
Yeah. So fortunately, I come from a family that threw away nothing. So, I was able to, not only photos, but other documents and so forth. But I realized that this couldn't be, and especially in this day and age, this happy faced history. And that we had to look at our past. And so that was tough to write, because I went to Santa Paula schools, and for me, it was just, wonderful and idyllic and whatever. But for the Latino kids at the time, it was likely a very different story. And so I wanted to look into that. So it was very eye-opening. For instance, Barbara Webster School. I didn't know that it was called Canyon School when it was first built in 1925, totally segregated. Compared to Isbell School. These are names which all Santa Paulans know. Isbell was built at the same time, twice the number of classrooms and the amenities. I tell the story of a gentleman named Julio Peralta, who had property and water rights. Ah, yes, water, up Santa Paula Creek. And there were 2 lawsuits to try to, to take his rights from him. And frankly, great-grandfather and Limonera were the ones that were, in the forefront of that. So as I said at the end of that story, did might make right? Yes, I think it did. Though Mr. Peralta was successful, but he had chased these lawsuits through the courts and was ultimately bankrupted. So he had to leave town. So, you know, he won the battle but lost the war. But I said, so did might make right? Yeah, I think so. Was it a product of the times? Likely. Was I glad there wasn't a statue of great grandfather in town? Yeah, I really probably was, because you know, a lot of us are doing some serious thinking about what we took for granted, and no longer can we do that.
Absolutely. Yes, very true. And also, as it's true that a lot of that was a reflection of the times, that doesn't make it right. That makes it something that we far too many places have in common, you know, type of a thing. And I know there's been now you've been involved on a professional level with Limoneira too now. So
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, I was voted in 1916 in 2016 to join the board, and I'm the third woman in the 127-year history. So is a huge. I'm thrilled with that. There had not been a woman on the board since 1974, and I remember sitting in a room full of men who had interviewed me, and I was, you know, good job, Betsy. You know, I thought it was a good interview. And there was a little silence, and I just looked at the gentleman and I said, "It's time, gentlemen, it's time." And what I meant by that was I was speaking up for all of the amazing women, not only in my family, but in the other founders' families, people that were in Limoneira, you know, and not just in the executive suite, you know, also the women behind the men, the women in the packing house. You know, Limoneira has never had women in the fields, but boy, every other aspect of the company. And so it's been exciting to be a part of that.
And Ned, do you find that that patrons of the library very often are they very aware of local history? Do you think you've got of course the library has that wonderful California room. Could you tell us a little about that? And I'm sure Betsy's book is going to be in the California room. So.
Well, we'll put a copy in there, but we'll put one in general circulation too, because things in the California room don't circulate. They're
That's all
sort
right.
of
I'm just giving away all of Betsy's books for her.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people coming into the library today don't necessarily know all the history that goes on. And of course, I'm relatively new to Santa Paula, but I've been enthralled with learning about the history of the library and the progenitors, the Nathan Weston Blanchard and the family, and the things that they've done for the city, the things they did for the library, the stories about the library, such as the speakeasies and the old library building that was constructed with that donation. And we still get people coming into the library today saying they remember playing around or in the library when they were little kids, sliding down the banisters on the sides of the steps, and then going down to the children's library in the basement. But I don't think many people realize that when the library first opened, the downstairs was actually City Hall.
Oh,
And
no.
it only became the children's library when the city moved out and occupied their own building. So there are little nuggets of history like that that I've been privileged to find out about that a lot of people just don't seem to realize that there's that part of the history.
Now, do you get a lot of foot traffic for the California room? A lot of researchers, or?
We get researchers. It's not open to the public unless they have a specific research need. But I would say we get people in with some degree of frequency. I know there's recently been some people in doing some research on the St. Francis Dam disaster. So that's been opened to them. So it's there. There's a lot of history about Santa Paula and some about California in general. And we have this amazing historian, Craig Held, who knows, I think, everything in every nook and cranny what's in there, and knows exactly where to go to find things, and does most of the historical research when we get requests for obituaries or Somebody was researching the old Citrus Exchange building
Mhm.
here in town, and Craig dug up quite a bit of material on that, including the fact that at one time that was actually the school board office in
Yes.
that building.
Oh,
So
no.
there's a lot of those bits of history that we can dig out and reference out of the materials in the California room.
Mhm. Betsy, did you stumble across anything, even though I could never imagine you stumbling, my friend, but did you come across anything
Good, Peggy.
that really surprised you while you were doing your own research, or because you're definitely
I did I did, as a matter of fact, and it was about one of my own family members, my grandfather.
Mhm.
And it was interesting because there's all this information about great grandfather and this person, but not a whole lot about grandfather. And I'd heard that he'd been expelled from the Thatcher School.
Mhm.
And then, oh yeah, then there was the elopement. And then, thank you, Craig Held. He told me about the high stakes poker games that grandfather ran upstairs in the Glen Tavern. So when I was writing about him, I named the chapter The Black Sheep. Perfect, right?
Mhm.
But then I was able to have access to, some family letters that were held at the Museum of Ventura County. And I began to get a very different picture. After Thatcher, he was sent to this kind of quasi-military academy up in San Francisco area. And I was reading letters that he wrote to Sarah, his sister. And I mean, he was lonely, he was homesick. And then I found, well, I'd heard the elopement was, some woman blows into town and, off they go. And well, it wasn't like that. Oh, I heard that great grandfather went after them, brought them home, had the wedding annulled. No, not at all. The woman was a fine woman of excellent family, and they were married for 8 years. So long story, that chapter became Black Sheep or Lost Sheep.
Oh, very
So,
nice. Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and it is part of the journey. And how kind of a reaction you've been getting from people from the book for the book?
Very positive.
Mhm.
I know that somebody's going to read it and go, whatever. You mentioned Kathy Berenger. In fact, I'm taking a book over to Kathy. She was my mother's best friend.
Yes.
And frankly, I kind of am a bit hard on my mom in some places. So I expect Kathy, I will hear from Kathy Berenger in that regard. But most people are very positive, and a few have said, I finished your book and I cried, which was like, oh my gracious, that I hadn't anticipated.
Mhm.
So we'll see. I just hope people enjoy it. I hope you learn a bit from it. That's my goal.
Well, it's a great read. I mean, really fascinating story. It's got such wonderful real life characters. You're an excellent writer, which of course goes without saying. And
Thank you, Peggy.
and a wonderful equestrian. And I particularly enjoyed the photos of you and the horses and Devon and everybody with, I've got a soft spot for that. And it's not just Santa Paula, it's all over the map as well.
Yeah.
So is there anything you'd like to add that I didn't ask you that perhaps you'd like to bring me up to date? Or
Well, I again, thank you for this opportunity, and thank Ned, oh my gosh, to be able to host the book signing at the library. But the exciting thing too is it's really a Santa Paula nonprofit party. The chamber is involved, as I call it, the Santa Paula Hysterical Society, the Historical Society, Santa Paula Art Museum, and the Oil Museum, the California Oil Museum, all are participating.
Mhm.
And it's just wonderful to have that kind of a community experience. And I think next Saturday, the 14th, from 1 to 4 is going to be a lot of fun. And I just invite anyone that's interested in the history of our area and wanting to see our friends and family, come on down. We're going to have a good time.
It's going to be a great event. And people should really consider getting there early because I think you're going to have a very large crowd. There's going to be a presentation first,
Yes.
and the signing will follow a presentation, and it'll be wonderful, and people can visit. It's going to be a wonderful social occasion for that matter also, you know.
It will, and of course it has the best master of ceremonies, and that's you.
Yes, of course. Yes, thank you. Yes. And I'm very pleased and honored that you asked. But well, that's wonderful. And I look forward to seeing you there. And Ned, I also look forward to seeing you there. Do you have any parting thoughts or anything we should have asked you and I didn't, or anything you'd like to add?
Well, we're delighted to be able to host this event. Betsy and I were talking at some point, and I know she was looking at potentially a different venue, and I offered the library, and because it just seemed to me to be just such a natural fit. It's sort of like you know, the Blanchards coming home to the library, even though it's not the same building, it's the same spirit. So we're just we're honored that that Betsy agreed to hold it here.
Yes, wonderful. And Betsy, you're going to have some props, I believe. I think you're going to have some photos there and maybe a few other things while we do your presentation, So it's
We
going
will. Yeah,
it's
we
gonna be,
will.
it's going to be a wonderful time. It really is.
I certainly hope so. It's just going to be a lot of fun. Thank you. Thank you all.
It is. Great. Well, once again, I'm Peggy Kelly, and this is Good Morning Santa Paula. Our guest today have been Ned Branch, the Executive Director of Blanchard Community Library, and author Betsy Blanchard Chess, who's written Daughter of the Land, Growing Up in the Citrus Capital of the World, which I glance at to make sure. And it's just a lovely book, and I can't wait for everybody to read it. It's sweet, it's sad, it's hard hitting. It's an excellent read, and it's just chock full of wonderful local history. So anyway, see you there. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. This is Good Morning Santa Paula. You can watch us on channel 10. You can go to kadytv.com. YouTube, go ahead and press subscribe if you're watching it on YouTube. And also Ned's going to go ahead and provide the link to it. And I believe Betsy is also. So we'll see you on the screen and in person a week from Saturday, August 14th. So thank you so much. And thanks again, Betsy. Wonderful seeing you. And you too, Ned. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy.
Okay. Bye-bye.